Well, good evening once again, and welcome to the Monday Review Show. Some exciting games during the week, some good for some and bad for others, but that's the way the cookie crumbles. I'm delighted to be joined again by Keith Hackett to discuss all things refereeing. And tonight we're going to discuss the whole issue of refereeing abuse, recruitment of referees. Body cameras have just been, they're starting to trial them out, which hopefully will solve some of the solutions. I'm a little bit skeptical on it. And of course, then there's body cameras. And then we'll go on to talk about recruitment and retention. So refereeing abuse, I suppose all of those I've mentioned surrounding the referees, I mean, you are part of a study that looked into this whole aspect. What do you think? Has it had any design?
We had the UEFA Referee Convention over 10 years ago. Part of being a member of the convention, each country, federation, for being a member, received a fair sum of money towards referees, improved performances and various other aspects.
Any idea what that amount was?
Well, in year one, UEFA delegated 18 million euros. And the principle was that they laid down how referees would be managed, the formulation of a referees committee, how referees would be appointed.
Referees committee, what now? In each country?
In each country.
So, for example, in England, would that be one referees committee from the Premier League all the way down to the lower divisions?
Well, it started off that way, and in principle, in England, it's slightly different because we had professional referees at the time. So, for the first 2 years, England were not members, despite the fact that I was one of the authors of the document. The principle being that we had to prove the independence of the refereeing structure away from the leagues. And of course, we managed to do that by them coming and inspecting us, UEFA, and seeing my role and the role of the board of the PGMOL, and were satisfied after 2 years that it met the criteria. So we gained membership. But in principle, what happened was the key was to try to get the same amount of management, training, referee recruitment and retention plans in place across what was then the 52 nations of Europe, which are now 54, I think, or maybe even more. And so you had countries like Albania and Montenegro and various others were securing payment. I mean, there was little funding going into refereeing in those countries, and as a result, they were getting financial assistance towards computers and projectors to give lectures, and they were given programs by UEFA. And some of those members of the referee convention would go into those countries to help them restructure. I mean, I can remember going into Macedonia, and at that particular time, I asked how many referees they'd got, and they hadn't got a clue. And so I can remember sitting in front of a pretty new laptop and doing an Excel spreadsheet, and with the guy sat at the side of me phoning up saying, "What's your details? How old are you?" Gathering that. Now that was on the extreme.
Yeah.
We would then go to, I had responsibility for Germany and Norway, as well as Macedonia. And so you went to Germany and you saw how well structured, how well organized and how efficient. So we were able to take some of the positives out of each country and pass those on to these smaller nations. But, they were getting financial help. And as a result, things like referees committees were very political.
Oh yeah.
And
They
many,
probably still are. I
yeah,
know one particular country, which I'll tell
yeah,
you off air,
yeah,
very, very politically. I mean,
yeah,
and not necessarily sucker politicians, as I call them,
yeah,
but
yeah,
actually national politicians
yes,
interfering too much. In fact,
yeah,
a couple of years ago, wasn't Zimbabwe suspended by FIFA because
yes,
too much government
yes.
interference?
So I think that the whole aspect was that we wanted referees with great experience being able to pass on their skill sets rather than just going to the blue yonder as they retired from refereeing. We wanted them to be retained in an education development role, educating them if necessary. So they were invited, some of these guys, to Europe, to UEFA headquarters. They would attend lectures, they would be trained to pass on their skill sets to others. So I think that's an important aspect of the convention. The retention aspect, I know we're jumping ahead, simply by creating a database and tracking those referees, whatever the grading system is in that particular country, they could then get a very clear picture as to why referees were leaving. Was it an age situation? Was it health? Was it abuse? All those aspects were tracked so that before you get the end result, there could be intervention to try and retain that referee. Sometimes referees get promoted higher up the ladder and they lose their enjoyment and they feel that they're a failure if they suddenly come back. But in reality, it's about finding your level and where you want to be in the realms of football. Yeah. So I think that
really
aspect
annoys
served
me
well.
to really more than annoys me. I'm trying to find a word for it. When I see little videos popping up on Facebook of referees being not only assaulted but being chased off the field and running for cover for fear of certainly injury, maybe even serious injury or even death.
Yes. Yes.
And what makes me even more annoyed is that there are certain people, and you'll see from the comments, actually find that amusing.
Yeah, I like you. Yeah, I think it's very disappointing. Probably when we actually look at this whole area of abuse, it on occasions really oversteps the mark.
Yeah,
and with referees finishing up in hospital, which is at the extreme.
Yeah.
And what is worrying is that we all know that trends that we see in the professional game cascade down. And when I started refereeing, there was literally one man and a dog, at grassroots level. The secretary of the home team, who was responsible for the kit and various other things, would arrive. We would have very few spectators on the field of play. But in reality, we look at youngsters now, 16 upwards, and they're going out on a field on a Sunday morning, and there's probably a couple of hundred people around the pitch. And these youngsters are beginning their career, which is always fairly traumatic in the early stages. So, okay, what can we do? I think, first of all, for me, I think that the FA have got to introduce a scenario where every club has to provide a referee mentor. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that person has been a referee. What it does mean is that he is the meter or she is the meter and greeter of that referee going into that club. And then that mentor actually looks after that referee, safeguards that referee through the process. So when they're out on the field of play and maybe a little bit of abuse is coming or starting to be generated by parents, the guy who's part of the home team, if you like, can go up and say, look, quieten down, and perhaps help with his peripheral control to get the spectators at that game to give some control. But, I was at a game a couple of years ago, and I'll give you this example. He was a very young looking referee, And, my first view was, wow, he's got a bit of courage to go out. There's probably about 50, 60 people there. And the centre half of the home team, headed the ball back to the goalkeeper. And I suddenly heard these shouts of pass back, pass back, pass back. And I'm going, looking, and there's a few of us around. And all of a sudden, this guy comes onto the field and grabs the referee. Of course, I'm running on. I'm now running on because that referee needs protection. And it was quite, I wouldn't have liked to have been on the receiving end as a youngster. But the outcome was that here was a guy who was moaning about the fact that the referee had missed a pass back. I then grabbed this guy and said, "You're wrong in law. And you are making the wrong call." This referee, by this time, the young referee's blown his whistle and said, "I've had enough." And then I spent about 10 minutes on the side of the field. I got this guy ejected from the ground. I had no real authority, in fairness, but and I wasn't even a parent. I was a spectator. But I got this guy.
Anyway, Keith, you'd be well.
I got this guy out of the stadium and convinced that youngster to finish the game, which he did, and he got a great round of applause and parents going up to him and complimenting him. But I shudder to think that that could have happened with spectators around and no one taking the responsibility. So hence this view that all of us have a responsibility of being a bit mature and less selfish. Over here, of course, in England, what we've got, Errol, is we're now we've got 16-year-olds taking up the game, and in some areas they wear a purple shirt, and in others they wear an armband that almost signifies that they're young. I mean, they look young, but it's to show the parents, look, this person, boy or girl, is in the infancy of a refereeing career. So and there's a guy in Liverpool, and I'll give a shout out. There's a business called Don't Cross the Line. It's not a business. The guy who's run it for maybe 20 years now, Mal Lee, does a huge amount of work. He was the guy that invented the posts and the rope or the tape 1 meter from the touchline, and it was "Don't cross the line," good. And that's been adopted in certain countries, which I think is great credit to him.
What happened to one of our referees here some time ago? I think I might have shown it to you before, but I want people to see the kind of abuse, physical abuse that this referee got. He's from the Midlands, a town called Athlone in the middle of Ireland. His name is Daniel Sweeney, actually no relation whatsoever. But this is what happened to him. I mean, he got a broken eye socket, a broken cheekbone, and a broken nose. And this was after the game in the car park where he was getting into his car. He was assaulted by 2 or 3 thugs. I wanted to interview him on the show, and he said he would love to come on, but at the moment he's got a legal case against these guys, so obviously he can't. But if you think that's bad, and that looks really, really bad, this lady in Pakistan, you can see she's looking forward, but behind her right ear, you can see the blood trickling down there where she was assaulted. You see it there? Yeah.
I think it's shocking.
It's appalling, and I don't think enough is being done either by the powers that be or the referees themselves, that they perhaps don't want to get too involved, but they should actually lay charges for GBH, grievous bodily harm, because that's what it is. And anyone found to be doing that should get 5 years.
Yeah, I mean, I'm quite clear. I'm quite clear that I say very clearly to people, if you've been assaulted on the field of play, you report it to the police.
Absolutely.
That's the first line, report it to the police.
Yeah.
And it is a criminal assault, and the authorities will take it seriously. I think there was an individual over here that was put in prison for assaulting a referee. But some things that happen are quite daft. I mean, I'll give you an example. There's a referee in Sheffield called Paul Cooper. He's a very experienced, mature guy, and he holds office. He was chairman, I think, of the Sheffield Referees Association, and this guy was verbally and physically assaulted. And he had, he reported the matter. Everything went through. The fines were minimal. But what was amazing was that when he got back after having some time out of the game, so he'd had a few weeks out of the game. The first team that he was given appointed to by the FA was the same team that had assaulted him. And in fairness to him, he went and did the game. And I said, well, I wouldn't have done. Because, I mean, from my perspective, I don't think that any team where a player assaults a referee should be allowed to play football again. I mean, I'm quite strong about it, And for a number of years, we had a guy, well, you may know him, Jeffrey Thompson, he finished up on the executive of UEFA, and he was chairman of the Football Association, but he was here in Sheffield a local referee at one stage, Derbyshire as well. And when Jeff took over the county FA here in Sheffield and then in Birmingham and in Durham, the amount of fines, the value of the fines rocketed. And the behavior of players improved. And, there was a model that he set. And so for me, I think it's a case of, this is a big subject, Errol, because one of the things that are contributing to the difficulty is, first of all, we have 16-year-olds. Sometimes there's such a shortage of referees. They get promoted too quickly. That's the first thing. They're appointed to games which are a concern. They might, which might be above their level of experience.
Not only that, Keith, of course, but sometimes they're getting games where the players are older than they are.
Oh, absolutely.
And
absolutely.
And that in itself is probably wrong.
Well, you get that, and then you then get even at the level that we play at, whatever step it is, which contains players who are paid in the league that I'm president of, and we have situations where the referees had a double promotion.
Yeah.
And you suddenly see naively, I mean, I'm not going to talk specifics, but recently we had a referee and I was really pleased because our spectators were constrained, our players were constrained, and the opposition were. But out on the field of play, I'm thinking everything you're doing is actually not conducive to a good performance. But what it said to me was that it could have been at another ground where perhaps the level of control and the level of attitude is different, and then it becomes difficult for the referee. I'm not blaming the referee here. I think the system sometimes is promoting too quickly. There's a lack of mentoring. There's a lack of coaching. And the Referees Association here in England is on the decline, not on the increase. I can remember going to the Sheffield Referees Association, sitting alongside a Football League referee, and across the room, George McCabe, the FIFA referee. And I'm in that same room. And when I had a problem, I could go to somebody and say, how do I deal with this? What are the words that I should use? What am I doing? Can you come and have a look at me? And so I think that association of referees gathering more frequently needs to be very strongly produced. Now, what we've got is, in certain areas of this country, I mentioned one guy, Ross Joyce, he's the North Riding FA. He's a Football League referee.
Regularly on my Facebook page.
Yeah, he's a Football League referee, and he's doing a superb job because he seems to work 24 hours a day, promoting young referees, encouraging them, had an awards ceremony recently. All the things that he's doing is positive, and it is trying to, I think, rather than getting referees sitting on their own, having the ability to be able to pick the phone up, mentoring each other, talking about their experiences and passing those experiences on week in, week out. Pick the phone up. I mean, I still speak to Mark Halsey pretty regularly, Roger Dilks pretty regularly. I communicate with Jeff Winter on occasions, Terry Farley and others, and they're former colleagues. And I know that many of them are still involved in refereeing development.
So, Keith, I know they're talking about trialing body cameras. Do you think that could be part of, or maybe the solution?
I think that why I'm feeling positive about them is this. It strikes me, when I was a young referee and I reported either a red or yellow card or a caution or a send-off, because we didn't have cards early in the 60s.
Yeah, correct, yeah.
So I operated for at least 10, 15 years without red and yellow cards. If I pushed in a report having dismissed a player, my report wasn't questioned. The county FA accepted it. The player was suspended. I think now we've got referees who are not bothering to put in reports.
Oh, well, I don't have any sympathy for those guys. I really don't.
Neither do I. Neither do I.
If they don't want to bother sending in a report or reporting yellow cards or red cards.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying they deserve what they get, but they're their own worst enemy.
Correct. And they're not helping their colleagues. That's the other side of it. And so the old scenario is that I think that in a way, the player was guilty unless they could prove their innocence 100%.
Yeah.
Now I think I listen to young referees and they've got the impression that they're not supported in the same way.
Yeah.
But in fairness, I look at some of the cases that go through the local county FA and, foul and abusive language or intimidation, fined £15. Let go. What deterrent is that? And of course, the other thing is suspended for 3 matches on occasions. And all they do, Errol, is some of them, they go, Fred Smith is the name of the player that's got the suspension. They go out and say, I'm Jack Jones, or, they play under another name.
But then surely you can compare that against the team sheet, unless the club are complicit and do put in a Fred Smith instead of a Jack Jones. Now that's even worse then.
Well, that's sort of, I think the county FA in my day, I would like to see every player registered and every player with an identity card, and that is shown to and produced through the FA and shown to the match referee before the game. That's how serious I take it, because I think that what the FA have got to do, I mean, look, it's their responsibility. They've got people who are probably even better educated than I am. They have systems in place. You know that with computer systems now, there's a lot that can be done to actually track those players that are abusive towards referees, either physically or verbally, and also they should be in a position to be able to track those referees that are not reporting the cases, that are issuing yellow cards and then not reporting them. Because the one thing that the FA have done in England is they have a whole game system that operates, which is very, very clear. I think they've got it working really well. But, sometimes I think, we operate the sin bin in certain leagues in England, and we operate it in the league I'm president. Rarely have I seen it used. So referees have got this piece of, if you like, deterrent that they're not using. So I just ask referees, toughen up a bit. You're too friendly.
Yeah.
You don't have to be officious, but you have to be efficient. And I think it's really important that referees do tighten up.
And isn't that happening, Keith? Even at Premier League level, the referees are too friendly with the players, and particularly the fourth official, and in a lot of cases, the assistant referee on the bench side. They seem to want to engage the player coming on in a conversation. Why are they doing that? It's none of their business. The referee on the field of play is going over to somebody who's gone down and maybe broken a toenail and rolling all over the place and mollycoddling him like he's his father. Are you injured? Do you need attention? Yes, call in on the trainer. That's it. Then step away. They shouldn't be anywhere near that. I have to give a call out to a guy who was the secretary of the Amateur Football League here in Ireland.
Yes.
Would be like a non-league clubs. A guy called Noel Kennelly, and he was absolutely brilliant. When you sent in your report, whatever was on that report, he took it as gospel, and he dished out appropriate punishment. That's why it was probably one of the best, if not the best, run leagues in the entire country.
Yes.
Supported the referees. He knew the referees. He knew his referees. He came to our meetings, and way back then when I was in the junior leagues, he came to our meetings, and you knew from the way he was talking that you had his back. And the teams knew that if they stepped out of line and a report went in about any abuse to a referee, they got nailed.
Yeah.
Not 15 pounds, a lot more than that. And sometimes, and in one case, points deduction when they were found guilty of harassing and harassing.
I think it really is an important subject that, there's got to be a great deal of, if you like, increase in punishments to,
more severe.
Yeah, I mean, in recent times, I watched this weekend where I thought generally the referees had some better performances. In fairness.
They did. Yeah.
And VAR was better on offside. So I'm thinking, I hope Howard's making an impact, because I know he's already moved 2 people on in that sense. So I look at it, but then I look at the falling over, the rolling in agony, goalkeepers taking far too long, referees showing no authority, and I'm thinking, we're allowing every decision that's been made to be questioned. And there's a smile on the referee's face. I'm telling you, if anybody came up and questioned one of my decisions, I was angry. And the noise would come out. I wasn't exactly blowing steam through the nostrils, but I was.
I just didn't
make it very clear that maybe somebody said to me, you're slightly threatening. And, the old facets of body language have to come into play. If you're a Bobby and you're approaching an individual and he's not taking any response, the copper will take some action. I think that I'm waiting for the one where he he ignores the referee. He's walking away. When the referee shouts to him, carry on, because that's what I would do. Carry on, mate. Off you go. Don't bother coming on. Back on.
And Keith, it's happening so much now,
Oh.
where referees are giving yellow cards to players who are walking away.
Oh.
So I'm waiting for a day that some player actually protests and said, I didn't see the yellow card.
Correct.
Part of the punishment or the admonishment, or call it what you like, should be the fact that he must come face his judge and accept the yellow card. But
Yes.
they're sticking up a yellow card, and you have to assume that it is the player who committed the foul. It may not be. It could be somebody who used bad language that's getting booked. How do you know? And there could be 2 or 3 players. How do you know which player has been booked?
Well, I mean, we saw this weekend with referee Stuart Atwell in the Tottenham-Chelsea game, I think, where there's a coming together, there's a push, a shove, and then a push in the face, that particular match. But he ran in and he got his yellow card already out. So I'm thinking, why have you done that? Because there's a push in the face here, or it looked worse than it was, in fairness. And then he goes through a whole process. So I'll go and chat to the assistant referee. The assistant referee says, well, to get the VAR and look at it, you better give a red. And he gives a red, and then eventually, I think, came to the right decision in the end, because the push was on the shoulder and caught the face. Because I made it quite clear when I was the boss, and I got the agreement of the clubs, and that was where a player puts his hands on the neck and upwards into the face of an opponent, he would be red carded. And I put that in place. The clubs accepted it. Then what we had is, you know, I've gone, I'm doing other things. And what I saw was people saying, well, it's got to be an act of violence. And I've said, well, just a minute here. We are playing football. Players don't play with their hands other than the goalkeeper. They keep their hands to themselves. But I've seen a watering down of that. And okay, I'll accept what he's done. How he got to that was like confusion. And you suddenly say to yourself, okay, I can make a case for a red card. But, you know, he's gone through he's gone through the processes, and you're thinking, how can a senior referee, which he is, and a FIFA badge referee, actually go through a process that looks untidy and confuses everybody? And, you know, it just seemed to take an age. And I think that what we're seeing through their own fault, referees at the very top level, they're trying to be too friendly. We're all pals in it together. 100%. And the players are making fun of them without them knowing.
Yeah,
they're making them look small, and they're saying, I can win him over. And of course, out of that comes this lack of trust, lack of respect, and you've then got spectators and fans saying, I think they're corrupt. They're not, and I will defend that to the end. But you know, you don't see many friendly policemen, do you? Because they've got a job to do.
If you want a friend, go buy a dog, you know, or something like that.
Yeah.
Keith, it's been great talking to you once again. My
Pleasure.
goodness, 35 minutes, and the time has gone so fast. I'm sure we'll return to this whole thing about referee abuse, because it's happening too much and too often, and really needs to be sorted out. And the people who can sort it out are, of course, the men in the grey suits or the blazers.
Yes.
And will they? Well, that's open to debate, I guess. Thank you again, Keith, for joining me. It's been fantastic. We'll do it all again next Monday, hopefully.
Thank you.
And thank
Take
you
care.
for watching, and keep your comments coming in, and I will reply to them all. For now, good night and God bless. Thank you.